Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
We assume that's the Bahamas. 544 miles per hour, 46, 56 degrees.
My name is Mindy Swanson. I have a master's degree in public health. When I was, kind of background on me, when I was young in high school, I thought I was gonna go to medical school, and I did all the prerequisites in college, somewhere during that time, I started to notice that how political health was, and I feel like this film that we just seen really captures the politics of health as opposed to the science of it. So I feel like you can't talk about the science without talking about the politics. It's intertwined, and to do prevention work, to fund the prevention work that needs to happen, which is what public health people are more aimed at, you need to argue that it's relevant and changing things is relevant. So I went to public health school and got a master's degree in public health at Berkeley. And the area that I was studying at the time was actually violence prevention. And what became really clear was the prevalence of guns in our communities was actually part of the problem. And then but there was a lot of barriers to get to intervene with that physical thing. And so for the last decade, I've been doing different work. I'm working in an educational institution. I'm working at what was my daughter's school, running a school garden program. And that program has, I think, even more broad implications, much like these physicians, in mentoring the students to see a different pathway. So I feel like, but I try to bring the science and the data into everything that I do as well. So I'm going to show you a little bit of kind of the data for our county in San Diego, because the story about our food system and our health in this county is different but similar to a lot of what's going on across the nation and what this film talked about with regard to a plant-based diet. So is the PowerPoint loading or? Okay. Okay, so my organization is called Dig Down Deep. My younger daughter gave me my name. And my title is Our Local San Diego Food System and Public Health. You could go to the next slide. So I feel like it's important when you're thinking about who you are in your food system, what kind of roles do you have? And in addition to having this background in public health where I study, my focus in public health school was epidemiology, which is looking at the data. And so I spent a lot of years writing data reports about what was going on with health. And so I have that background, that kind of framework to kind of look at things like those risk ratios and those incident rates that they were putting up on the film. But I'm also a gardener, and I come from farmers. I was adopted, but both my adopted family and my biological family both were farmers, but generations back, like 2 generations, 3 generations back. I'm a mother, and that means that I cook a lot for my family. So that makes a big difference in terms of the health. And I've supported a lot of local farms. My friend KK's out there with Second Chance. I encourage you to purchase her produce. Her program is amazing. I've been on the board of Wild Willow Farm. I helped start Victory Gardens. So I've supported these local organizations that grow food because I believe that is part of the pathway for our health, not just of our bodies, but of our environment. And so my work as a garden educator and a wellness coordinator is to try to intervene in that cycle and help students to make a choice that they wouldn't make because they have that relationship with the food that's deeper than just seeing it on the line when you're scooping up your plate. So here's some of my students, and we regularly during class will harvest things and eat them together. And it's an exposure that some of them wouldn't normally have at home. So it's like, and it's a social thing. So it's really influential. You could go ahead to the next slide. In the film, they talked about obesity. This is just a definition. This is actually from the CDC, and it's about your body weight. It's about how, but it's on your. It's an effect of your metabolism. It could be caused by your metabolism. It could be caused by the behavior. In this film, they were really talking about that it's caused by our behavior of eating animal fats, but there are socioeconomic issues that are really important in this whole equation about our food system and obesity. So I really want to focus in on that. Let's go to the next slide. So this, I don't know if you hit it, will the different charts pop up? They're not coming through. Okay, so actually, if this was all showing, and you can see this on the internet at the CDC, the first in 1990, everything is in the blue for California, around less than 10%, going into the 10 to 14%. By 2000, we're getting yellow, and then by 2010, we're in the red. This statistic is still pretty prevalent in a lot of our child obesity rates, that 1 out of 3 students is overweight or obese. So this is a pretty serious data, and it happened rather rapidly. And as they noted in the film, it correlates pretty highly with the increase in processed food, the increase in more animal products being more readily available and being used more often. I'm sorry that the slide doesn't show all those pictures. So when they talk about obesity in the Center for Disease Control, they do try to make these connections that the film was making about people's behaviors and choices. They talk about that people aren't eating the right things. They talk about people aren't exercising enough. And they talk about one of our bigger problems today is that electronics are really taking over, and people spend a lot of time face down on screens or sitting down with their face at a screen. So, and our kids are really, I mean, that a lot of times kids don't get let outside in urban areas because parents are afraid. I see it all the time at our school. So this is a big issue that they've been trying to work on in the county. Let's go to the next slide. And then poverty has a big impact on what your neighborhood is like and whether you're going to feel safe to let your child outside. Also, the accessibility to good, healthy produce. And there's a way that, they discuss this in the film, that the industries who are promoting their highly processed, less healthy food and making big profits off of it are benefiting by not making those accessible, the other healthy foods accessible to people in those communities. So there's a lot of stuff out there. There's some really good films even that children have made in Los Angeles about their experience of living in East LA and trying to get to go to Whole Foods, and how many buses they had to take and how hard it is to afford what you could buy at a Whole Foods marketplace. Let's go to the next slide. So in our county, the Center on Policy Initiatives recently, every year they publish a report on poverty in our county, and we have 1 out of 3 families is living on the edge here. So when you think about how that impacts your food choices and your ability to survive in a healthy way, this is a serious issue. So I think that, the data is really strong about poverty, and the data is also really strong about inaccessible food. So we need to change these 2 issues. Let's go to the next slide. Our food system is really complicated. And what makes it even more complicated is the fact that, and this comes from a curriculum called Nourish, that's available for it's middle school, high school level, and they have films that go along with it. But just thinking about all the different components and how much money that is. And we don't even have on this map the health costs, which is kind of the end game. We're just talking about just to create this food and to eat it, to travel it to where it needs to go, to research its qualities, to make sure it's safe. All these kind of things are part of this very, very complex food system. When I'm talking about it with my students, the next slide, I think about it, I'll try to think about it a little bit simpler, but to try to help them to start thinking about these complicated things, because what I've been thinking about the last few years of my work is I hope I'm giving them life skills around growing food. I hope I'm giving them life skills around nutrition and planting things that are healthy and how to take care of it. But I also feel like I'm, more importantly, cultivating educated voters who are going to make a choice about the Farm Bill to push the government to change this practice of subsidizing corn syrup and genetically modified corn, which is what currently happens. So if you start talking about some of these things, which are very complex at an early age, I think it gives it a chance for these students to get more of an idea of what that means and how that fits together, and to be able to articulate it to each other and to the powers that be. So go ahead. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the history. Is anybody here a native San Diegan? Yeah? So, I mean, this is Mission Valley. Isn't that crazy? It used to be farms. So this is we still have a lot of farms in our county, but there used to be a lot more. Let's go to the next slide. This is as it developed, and it's even developed more than this in the last probably 5 years, where they've put more condos and other large developments into this region. And that's the Watershed. This is a place where really good access to water to growing food. So farming in this county has been impacted by the way they've done development, and that actually impacts our food choices too. So let's go to the next slide. In our San Diego food system, we're impacted by being a border town and a vacation end-up spot. So the kind of food that we have available is not only the kind of food that is not healthy because of the USDA and the Farm Bill, but also because we're trying to encourage people to come here on vacation. And on vacation, you're not going to eat healthy food. You're going to splurge. So a lot of what we have are these high-fat, high, kind of sometimes foods available to us. This is actually a really interesting chart about our crop report for the county. It's not the current year because they come out later, so it's the last one that was available. And one of the things that's changed a lot within our county in terms of our local food system is that we used to have a lot more food being grown in our county. But it's decreasing every year. And the nursery, cut flowers, ornamental plants are starting to be our top 3 crops. And avocados is down to 4, and tomatoes is down to 5. So we used to have a lot more local food being grown, and now we're having more ornamental plants. But I don't know if anybody knows, but we have the most farms in any county in the country, and the most organic farms of any county in the country. We have a lot of smaller organic farms. So this is like something that we could really do something about and have more access to local food if we make an effort. And there has been an effort recently in the last 5 to 6 years to increase the number of farmers markets, try to get local food into the schools with the farm to school programs in the 40 districts that are in our county. So, and it's been fairly successful. Go ahead. And this is my garden. It's over at Birney Elementary. That's why I wanted to come here and share with you, because I encourage you to come by. There's a joint use field next to our school, so you can see the orchard garden, which we have combined with our south garden and our orchard garden. We have 40 fruit trees on campus that time off during the year. So we'll have apples in the fall, kumquats in the winter, guavas and pomegranates and figs. And we're hoping this is going to be our first year to have bananas. So it's kind of great for the kids to have all these fruits, but we also, and I'm a really big proponent, fruits are easy, fruits are sweet, but vegetables are much harder. So just cultivating that idea that a taste for vegetables in a child, and not to eat a vegetable just like cooked within something that's greasy and meaty, but to try it raw, or in a simple salad with lemon juice and a little bit of salt and olive oil. So we do a lot of just spontaneous tasting. We even eat some of the edible weeds together. So I just wanted you to get a kind of idea of what we're doing here. Go ahead to the next slide. Here's a student doing some botanical drawings and thinking about nutrition. We do this with our second graders in the winter session.
I'm sorry, where is
Birney Elementary. This is also that Birney Elementary.
which is where?
It's on Park Boulevard, right next to where El Cajon hits. There's the district offices, and it's just to the right. So if it's actually Campus Drive is the entrance. We were actually in the news this last week, I have to tell you. It's a kind of a bad situation. The district's struggling because there's been lead detected at, now we're the second school, in our drinking fountains. And that's another whole issue when you talk about nutrition. If your students are eating a healthy diet rich in iron, which you can get plant-based sources of iron for sure. Leafy greens are a big source of that. Leafy greens are amazingly nutrition on all levels. And there's some beautiful ones outside. I encourage you to get some to take home. But if you're eating a healthy diet, the hemoglobin attaches to the iron, and it resists the lead. So if your diet is poor, which is often the case in lower income communities when they're eating highly processed food that has less nutrition, then when you are exposed to lead through your water or through eating paint chips, as a child might do, there's more of a chance of getting poisoned. So it was something that I actually talked with my students about this week. This is about our garden program at Birney Elementary. And I actually have people working with my program with Dig Down Deep at Jefferson and at McKinley as well. And it's a similar program at each of the sites. They actually come out to the garden out during their school day. So the teachers do collaborative time, and we have time to be in the garden together. So I see every student on campus pretty much every week. The littles I see every other week for longer, so I can have more time with them out in the garden. It's an international baccalaureate school, so what that means is we're part of an international baccalaureate organization where we follow a curriculum plan that will ultimately kind of make us equal with other schools across the world. So it's a nice system, and at the primary years program level, it's really about values and ideas around that really connect well with learning about nutrition and environment. So that's the way that I can underscore in my gardening work. We talk about nutrition and health standards in every grade, and we really, really, really are trying as hard as possible to decrease our waste, our footprint that way. I'm going to go to the next slide. At Birney, I teach kids the 11-ish main food plant families. So they get to see plants with this cross-section of botany. So for example, in kindergarten, they see how similar all those different plants are, the leaves, the seeds, and even by the flavor of them. And then we're also studying butterflies. So carrot family is the host for swallowtail butterflies. So they get to see that whole piece in a huge and interesting way. And then by the time they get to 5th grade, we're talking about things like coping mechanisms and starting to think about diseases, and they're studying issues like plantations. So we talk about tobacco, which is a nightshade family plant, a cousin to tomatoes and eggplants. And so they can kind of see those connections between some of these plants and how plants can be poisonous or they can be medicine, as it was in this film that we just watched. Let's go to the next slide. We do a lot of composting. I think one of the things that film didn't talk about a lot was the whole effort of farming and how hard the work is to farm. And so I want the students to see how hard it is to make good soil and how important it is to keep that soil alive. A good soil is a living soil. You don't have to do as much work on a soil that's alive. The bacteria, the good bacteria, like we talk about probiotics in kombucha or yogurt or other things like that, is in the soil. And that helps the plants get the nutrients they need. So if you don't have living soil, if you're just pouring Miracle-Gro or some kind of fertilizer on your plant, then you're feeding the plant instead of feeding the soil. And there's a lot of metaphors in farming and nutrition that work really well together. Actually, there's a book I saw recently, and actually one of my colleagues that I used to do HIV/AIDS work with was noted in this book. But a doctor who's also got a public health degree wrote a book about how farmers have something to show us about nutrition. I can't remember the title right now, but I feel like this idea of keeping our soil healthy is something that sometimes is so foreign when we talk about our nutrition, but it's very, very connected. And we're killing our soil in a lot of places. At Birney, we sometimes put about 100 gallons of food waste into our compost a week. So, and that's through collecting during lunchtime. That's taking the salad bar that the staff has to throw away and keeping it and putting it into the compost. And then we also collect coffee grounds from Twig's Coffee Shop. So between all of those and then the trimmings and the straw that we have in the garden, we build our soil. So that's pretty cool. Next slide. So I think also another thing the film did not talk about is how much food is wasted in our country, which is a huge, yes, animals and the eating animals and the animal operations are a big cause to global climate change and the methane and all the problems that they produce environmentally. But this is one of the most horrifying things. If you look in the bottom corner, so I take with my 4th and 5th graders at least once a year. This was the second time we did it to kind of see if we had any improvement. We pour out the garbage cans from lunch, all of the garbage cans. And in the garbage cans, we sort out what is trash, like plastic trash, or we actually throw away because we don't have a capacity to compost the meat or the cheese, and dairy. And then we take out anything that we should have composted and put it back in the bucket and see how much we missed. And then we take out any recyclables. And a lot of times the kids are like, whoa, they can't believe how many people, take a sandwich that somebody has made so lovingly for them, and it's just been thrown whole into the garbage can. And so kids are like, that whole food insecurity, you see the kids who don't have it, and they're horrified by this waste, and then you see these other kids who start to kind of be activated by this. And one of the most intense findings that we had this last year was 3 unopened gallons of milk are thrown away during our meal time, each meal, not each day. So 6 gallons of unopened milk are thrown away at each meal. So when you think about what's happening with the farm operation to raise that cow, to get that milk, to transport it to the school, and then we're throwing it in the garbage. Like there was on these milk cartons, they had this little thing and it said, crime hotline. And I almost called it up for the cows because I was like, this is just, and then the kids and I have been trying to think about what can we do to And part of this is an educational issue because actually the food services department has come around and isn't pushing milk on students, but students don't know that and cafeteria staff don't know that. And it's easy for them to just make the kid have a complete meal by taking the milk. But they can have a complete meal by taking some beans or other protein sources and, you know, and making their plate whole and it still be a qualified meal for the meal program. And nobody's getting that information out. So, you know, the kids are now trying to help me figure out how can we deal with this part of the problem too, because it's a much bigger problem than just what you choose to eat. It's also what you choose to throw away. So the next slide. And this was what was really cool was some of my students from Roosevelt Middle School who came back to their elementary school to do this project with me and made a poster for us, which was kind of cool. And I feel like it's really important to get the word out more about this food waste issue. And I think it's starting to be more out there, what we can do and how it happens, and encouraging people to do some composting and encouraging the city to do more green waste collection. So this is what those students came up with for their project. We'll go to the next slide. So in addition to harvesting food for the classes, we also have a farm stand on the first Friday of the month, and that's the first Friday. This actually next month it's going to be the second Friday because of different reasons at the school, but it's a day where the parents and families can take home produce, not just what we eat in class. So if you ever want to come by on a first Friday, the students help me harvest. We always have a lot of greens. So there's a picture of us harvesting together, and here's some ladies at the farm stand. And the next slide is some of the posters that the kids made to help promote vegetables, which was awesome. And another way I'm trying to promote is with staff. So the USDA, in an interesting way, made a requirement that school districts have to have wellness policies. And the home for where that wellness policy is for the district, but the food services department is what gets judged on whether that is there or not. So all the districts across the country were required to do these wellness policies, but there's nobody to police them. So school staff have to take this job on to tell people not to bring cupcakes, because it's actually illegal by this wellness policy to have a celebration and bring in high sugary foods. It's illegal to sell candy and other unhealthy foods on campus. And a lot of the parent organizations and the fundraisers actually break this rule all the time because people want to make money for their school, and that is a very successful fundraiser to sell soda or popsicles or high sugary foods. So we're trying to change that around. We got a little grant from Kaiser to get kitchen equipment. Some of it's behind these two teachers. And then because I had so much produce this year, I said, I'm going to make salad for the teachers. So now once a week on Wednesdays, I pull some students that want to come out and need some outside time more. It's kind of like horticultural therapy time. And we go out to the garden, we harvest produce together, and then I make a salad with some students for the teachers. And they have salad, and it's become, I think one of the things that this film also didn't talk about, but it did really portray, was how we also, in addition to not eating nutritious food a lot of the time, we don't have nutritious community in terms of the time that we spend with each other, and how that social connection of eating together can be so powerful. And I feel like that's been the biggest influence in my work, is having these students see their friend enjoying something of a vegetable that they may not ever want to try, and them kind of thinking, oh, I might want to eat that now. And so there's this whole influence that happens, and then it's a social thing, not a forced, like, you have to eat your vegetables. There's poor children somewhere who should get that food, you know, and you have some, so you should eat it. This kind of angry or negative way of doing it. It's more of a, let's have a party and make a salad together. Let's have a party. We have new ninja smoothie things, so we've been making smoothies a lot with our greens too. So, I think there was one more slide. Yeah, so, and oftentimes in class the kids will just say, can we just make a platter? And what they make ends up being also really aesthetic. So I think that actually has a big impact on enjoying it too, is enjoying that whole experience of harvesting and washing and seeing the natural environment and then making it look beautiful. So thank you for listening to my talk. If anybody has any questions or comments about the program, I'm happy to talk with you more about it. You're welcome to come visit. I'm there most days of the week. I would be happy to give you a tour. I used to have people come in from the community and help me compost on the weekends, and I would be open to having that happen again if you live nearby. So, because I feel like all schools are tax dollars at work, and they should be community resources. So, thank you for listening. How many of you, by the way, have came to the film because you are thinking about vegan diets, or anybody? Yeah, okay. Yeah, I didn't know that it was going to be so pro-vegan, but to me the political issues are really concrete. I mean, so it's very interesting. I think it was well done.
Have you ever seen Planet Pure Nation?
Uh-uh.
So that one actually is kind of a follow-up to Folks Over Knives, and it really talks about politics a lot more even than this one.
Wow.
About the subsidies and why, and also just the politics of it, and why a lot of people have no idea that they can actually empower themselves with a healthier diet.
Awesome.
They don't know. So it's about that, and why is that the doctors don't know about it. So that's a really good film to watch.
Can you repeat it again?
It's called Plant Pure Nation.
Plant Pure
You
Nation.
should have it here, Brian. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
They just showed a film here. It was called Tomorrow.
Uh-huh.
It was really good, but it dealt with like climate change and like
Awesome.
things that other countries are doing and that we could do that would really help. And like one of the things that really focus on is education. They also focus on like compost and like
Awesome.
wasting food. You should check that out. They just got rid of it like Thursday, I think. It was really
Awesome. That sounds really good. I feel like it's so important to be part of your local food system. Don't just support it, be part of it, you know, and I feel like it transforms your life. I've been hauling coffee from the Twigs coffee shop for the last 10 years, and I have relationships with the baristas, and they love it because I'm carrying away this heavy thing that they would have had to haul out to the trash. I love it. My soil's so good because of this coffee growth. So there's these relationships then too, and they come over and we share with each other. It's a community building too. So it's awesome. Thank you.
Do you know if there are other schools doing the same program?
So Jefferson and McKinley also have garden programs that my organization, Dig Down Deep, helps run. But in the district, there's a group of garden coordinators that have been gathering. The next meeting of that group will be happening at my school, so you can meet some people from all over. The county actually the San Diego Unified have many school gardens, but I didn't talk about this very much, but sustainability is a huge issue because the funding for these garden programs is really little, and we've been able to leverage some different resources to make it survive at Birney Elementary, but at a lot of sites, they don't fund the work. They fund the pieces of the garden, the infrastructure. And so because of that, and I feel like I have this window into what it's like for the farmers, because unless they take these subsidies to grow the things that they don't necessarily want to grow, they don't always have the money to keep their doors open. And if you look at some of the income some of these farmers are living on, it's really not cool what we're doing, you know? So, but there are other schools with school gardens and they want help. So that's what I'm trying to say. So yeah, but some of the gardens are there, but they're not being used. So it depends on the site. I've seen a lot of gardens come and go in the last 10 years. in this county.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.